Do you know how it feels to know that the individuals you trusted the most never truly stood by you? Yes, I did have to learn that the hard way. My name is Jake, and until recently, I believed that my life was going well. I had a lovely wife, two wonderful children, and a loving family. Or so I believed. I turned out to be the additional piece that didn't fit in the puzzle, the outsider the entire time. And as soon as I realized it, things quickly began to come apart. About 6 months ago, it all began. I've been married to my wife, Emily, for 15 years. Our two children are 11-year-old Ben and 14-year-old Lily. Although it wasn't flawless, life was good. I had a reliable job in it, while Emily worked part-time at a nearby boutique. Despite our lack of luxury, we managed to make it work. But Emily's family? The cracks began to appear there. Mark and Susan, her parents, were the kind of individuals who were obsessed with appearances. They planned lavish family get-togethers and trips, all of which were expertly staged for social media, of course. Their golden offspring were Ryan, Emily's brother, and Jessica, his wife. If Ryan were to set a building on fire, they would most likely attribute it to the wind. I always felt like an afterthought, though, like if they were being kind to me by allowing me to sit at the table. However, I gritted my teeth and endured it. For the children? For Emily? I reasoned that everything would be all right as long as we maintained harmony. I was mistaken. A family trip was the first indication that something was wrong. Mark and Susan couldn't stop gushing about how well-deserved Ryan and Jessica's recent return from a posh resort in Bali was. We received a group SMS a week later, family trip to Italy. June 15th to the 30th. Everyone's invited. When Emily read the message, her countenance brightened. Italy! Is it not unbelievable? She uttered those words, virtually bouncing with enthusiasm. Ben and Lily had already started organizing their belongings. However, I didn't like something about it. Wait, I remarked. How are we going to pay for Italy? That's nothing to worry about, Emily answered, dismissing it. Dad and Mom are taking care of it. That ought to have been my first warning sign. Though not very generous, Mark and Susan were giving. So I said, Are you certain? Emily gave an eye roll. Calm down, Jake. The trip is for the whole family. They desire for us to be there. However, they did not. After a week, Emily entered the kitchen wearing an odd expression. Hey, so there was a mistake. I raised my eyes from my computer. Mix up? She fidgeted with the hem of her jumper, saying, Yeah, Mom and Dad only purchased tickets for the children and me. I gazed at her. What? It isn't personal, she uttered rapidly. They simply thought you wouldn't want to attend. Presumed? My voice became piercing. Why on earth would they think that? Emily's gaze strayed. Jake, you don't really appreciate family activities. They reasoned that you would want to remain at home. They calculated? My chest became constricted. Or did you figure? Emily let out a sigh. Look, we are unable to help. The tickets are non-refundable and have already been purchased. So why don't you remain with me at home? With my heart racing, I inquired. She smiled strainedly at me. It's Italy, Jake. That's when I realized. I wasn't really a member of the family. I was an accessory. Disposable when not in use, convenient when needed. Are you really comfortable with this? I inquired. She added. They're covering the entire trip, as if that made it acceptable, and you're simply going to let them abandon me? She yelled. Jake, stop making this a bigger deal than it is. It's not as though they despise you. They simply didn't anticipate your want to go. And that was all. No regrets, no effort to make things right. The choice was already made. I simmered for the next 2 months. I listened to Emily and the children as they enthusiastically planned the vacation, discussing the destinations they would be visiting, such as the Vatican, the Amalfi Coast, and the Colosseum. When my children looked at me with delight, I had to appear to be glad for them and smile back. I took them to the airport the night before they went. Emily gave me a farewell embrace as I stood by the car. She assured him that they will FaceTime with him. Yes, I replied in a hollow voice. Yes. I held the children for a little too long when they hugged me. Lily grinned and withdrew. Dad, we'll bring you something awesome. Ben smiled. Indeed, similar to pizza. A stinging pressure went through my heart. I said, I love you both. I felt as though I was being abandoned in a number of ways as I watched them make their way to security. However, what followed? Everything truly went to bad at that point. I ought to have anticipated it. Hell, perhaps I did, perhaps I simply didn't want to tell myself. However, the solitude was overwhelming as they sat in that deserted house after they departed for Italy. I made an effort to stay occupied throughout the first several days, mowed the yard, fixed the kitchen sink that was leaking, and cleaned the garage. However, my phone was always vibrating with Emily's updates. Emily, I arrived in Rome just now. The weather is great. Emily, the gelato is a hit with the kids. Emily, tomorrow, Ryan and Jessica have scheduled a private tour to the Vatican. The third one was the last time I responded. It was the pictures, not simply the phrases. Photos of Emily and the children smiling with Ryan and Jessica on a charming Florence street, holding wine glasses at a classy restaurant, and in front of the Colosseum. In the background, Mark and Susan were constantly laughing and unwinding as if nothing were wrong. As if I were non-existent, I was unable to look away from them. Despite my absence, my children appeared to be very content. Not even my own wife seemed to notice. Emily started texting less frequently after the first week. Then they came to a total halt. About 10 days into the trip, my phone buzzed one evening while I was relaxing on the couch. Lily was the one, I answered, trying to sound cheerful. Hey, sweetie. Hey, Dad. Lily had a lively voice, yet it sounded as though she had been running. We just returned from this incredible eatery. In front of us, they prepared freshly made pasta. I answered, That sounds fantastic. How is Ben doing? He's sleeping, I see. We had spent the entire day strolling. I grinned. Well, let him know that I adore him. I will. A pause ensued. Hi, Dad? Yes? What kept you from joining us? My chest constricted. I took a deep breath. Lily, I wasn't invited. You could have purchased a ticket, correct? Her voice was small as she requested. I said, It's complicated. She remained silent for a while. Then I miss you, whispered. My throat ached. Baby, I miss you too. That night, I hardly slept at all. As I gazed at the ceiling, I considered Lily's words. I was not invited, not desired. Feeling alienated was one thing, but knowing that my wife had allowed it to happen and had been fine with it was quite another. Then Emily called me around 3 days before they were scheduled to return home. She said, Hey, as if nothing were wrong. Hey, I said in a steady voice. She began, So, funny story. I shut my eyes. What is it? Well, Ryan and Jessica made the decision to remain for an additional week. We were considering it until Mom and Dad offered to pay for our accommodation as well. Are you staying? She said softly, as if it weren't a huge concern. It's only for a few more days. Are you really going to prolong the vacation without even discussing it with me? My voice grew sharper as I spoke. Come on, Jake. We have already arrived. The children are having a great time, I yelled. Emily, the kids haven't seen their dad in 2 weeks. She let out a sigh. You've been all right, haven't you? You've had a little alone time. My hands began to shake. Time for myself? Was this what it was? A reprieve from me? That's it then, I said. You don't give a damn about my feelings about this? She said, Jake, I care, but it's not as if we're acting improperly. I gave a sour laugh. Are you not doing anything incorrectly? You abandoned me. You clearly stated my position inside this household. Her voice hardened as she said, Oh my God. Stop inflating yourself. Shocking? I let out a bark. Emily, you and the kids have been playing happy family with Ryan and Jessica for the past 2 weeks, while I've been sitting at home. You're telling me now that you'd prefer remain there than visit me at home? That isn't the case. That's just how it is. A protracted hush ensued. Emily then let out a sigh. Look, let me speak with Mom and Dad. If it is that important to you, we will return home on schedule. Don't worry, I answered icily. Remain for as long as you like. Jake, I ended the call. The rage weighed heavily on my chest. My hands shaking, I paced the living room. I had sacrificed for this family for years. I had endured the nonsense from Mark and Susan, grinned at Ryan's arrogant remarks, and allowed Emily to dismiss their treatment of me. However, this This was not like the others. I wasn't just left out. I was expendable, and I hadn't had enough of acting the other way. Emily and the children returned home 3 days later. At the airport, the children rushed to me and gave me such a strong hug that I was having trouble breathing. As she showed me the charm bracelet she had purchased at a street vendor, Lily was beaming. Emily? She appeared tanned and at ease. As if nothing had occurred, she gave me a quick peck on the cheek. She smiled and said, "Hey." I didn't return the smile. It was a calm ride home. In the back car, Lily and Ben talked about all the places they had been. Emily was scrolling through her phone while seated in the passenger seat. The children rushed upstairs to unload as soon as we arrived home. Emily came into the kitchen behind me. She put down her phone and said, "So, are we going to discuss it?" I folded my arms and leaned against the counter. "What is there to discuss?" She scowled. "Jake, stop acting this way." "Like what?" "Cold," she said. I sneered. "Emily, you abandoned me. You didn't even defend me. I didn't believe it was that significant." "Exactly," I retorted. "That is the issue." She gave her face a rub. "You're overanalyzing this, Jake." "No," I muttered. "I can finally see it clearly now." She looked frustrated as she shook her head. All right, I apologize." "Joyful?" "No," I replied. "I'm not." I wasn't sure I would ever be again for the first time in our marriage. Nothing returned to normal after the vacation. Emily pretended that nothing was wrong, as if nothing had occurred. She returned to our pattern with ease, kissing me on the cheek before bed, helping Lily with her homework, and brewing coffee in the morning. However, I sensed the remoteness. It was like an open wound between us. I began to notice previously unnoticed objects. Emily never shared her texts with me, but she was constantly on her phone, grinning at them. When her screen came to life, Ryan's name appeared multiple times. I was sitting in the living room one evening after the kids had gone to bed when Emily entered and began browsing through her phone. "To whom are you speaking?" I inquired nonchalantly. She looked at me and said, "Jessica." "Really?" I said, because it appeared as though Ryan's name had just appeared. Her grin dimmed. "What are you trying to say?" I sat up taller and added, "I'm not implying anything. I'm just wondering why you overlooked the fact that you've been speaking with Ryan." She let out a sigh. "Stop being paranoid, Jake." "I don't have paranoia," I stated calmly. "My attention is focused." Her face grew serious. "What if I speak with Ryan? He is related," I answered. "That's not the point." "What's the point then?" she yelled. I sharpened my voice and continued. "The point is that you don't seem to think you did anything wrong." She gave an eye roll. "Jake," I interrupted, "you left me behind. You didn't stand up for me. You let Ryan and your parents to choose my place in the family. And now you're saying that I'm insane for being offended?" "You're exaggerating," she stated bluntly. I got to my feet. "Am I?" Emily's expression contorted. "Jake, I'm exhausted. I lack the energy to do this." I was left standing there with my heart racing as she left the room. Lily came downstairs the following morning when I was enjoying a cup of coffee at the dining table. The charm bracelet she had purchased in Italy was on her. I tried to speak lightly as I said, "Morning, sweetie." With a drowsy smile, she took a seat. "Are we able to visit the park today?" "Obviously," I said. "Let's see if Ben would like to attend as well." Lily paused, adjusting the bracelet. "Is there a problem?" I inquired. She turned to look at the steps. "Is Mommy upset with you?" I made an effort to grin. "No, dear." Simply said, "Adult stuff." Lily remarked. "She looked crazy last night." I let out a sigh. "It's difficult." She cast her gaze downward. "I find it annoying when you fight." "Neither do I muttered. "However, there are instances when parents disagree." Lily gave a slow nod. "I simply enjoyed it when we were all content." My chest constricted. Me too. I took the kids to the park later that day. The leaves were beginning to change color on this cool autumn afternoon. Laughing, Lily and Ben ran toward the swings. I briefly experienced a glimmer of calm as I watched them. My phone then buzzed. Emily sent this text. "When you return, we need to talk." I put the phone in my pocket and sighed. Emily was seated at the kitchen table when we arrived home. She had her arms folded. My gut nodded at the expression on her face. "Go upstairs, kids," I said. Lily scowled. "Will you engage in combat once more?" I responded softly. No, we'll just have a conversation. After they left, I took a seat across from Emily. So? I replied. So? She repeated. She had a keen eye. Will you continue to punish me for the trip? I clenched my jaw. You believe this to be that? This is precisely what it is, she remarked. You haven't talked to me much since we returned, I said. I'm trying to process what happened. Exasperated, she added. Jake, it was just a trip. No, I snapped back. There was more to it than that. That's when I discovered I'm not as much a member of this family as I had assumed. That is absurd, is it? I leaned forward. You didn't stand up for me. When your parents didn't include me, you didn't protest. And when I told you how I felt, you really didn't care enough to come home? She made a small line with her lips. I apologize if you felt excluded. What if? I sneered. If I felt excluded? She gave her temples a rub. I didn't mean to hurt you, Jake, I answered. You say that all the time. But you did it anyway. She let out a sigh. What am I supposed to say? I said. I want you to acknowledge that you prioritized them over me. Her eyes blinked. Jake, they are my family. And who am I? I fired back. Emily's mouth parted, then shut again. That's what I believed, I retorted. She got to her feet. I'm not sure what you're asking of me. I stood up and said, I'd like to know why. Why didn't you inform your parents that abandoning me was unacceptable? What made you believe that was typical? She encircled herself with her arms. Because it's normal, she muttered. My heart pounded in agony. What? She said cautiously. My parents have always had a complicated relationship with you. Difficult? I said it again, icily. Try being hostile. She let out a breath. Jake, you've never really been accepted by them. I chuckled ominously. And you didn't mind that? She acknowledged. I thought it didn't matter. Because we were together. However, we don't, I replied. Not at all. Since you ultimately decided to go with them. Tears sparkled in her eyes. I apologize, she muttered. I gave a headshake. No, you're not, she inhaled nervously. What comes next? I gazed at her for quite a while. I had a racing heart. I'm not sure, I replied. Emily drooped her shoulders. She appeared to be exhausted. Defeated, she whispered. I'm going to bed. Without turning around, she walked out of the room. I took a seat at the table and gazed at the vacant spot where she had been seated. My chest hurt. I wasn't confident we could resolve this for the first time. There was tension in the days that followed. Only when it was absolutely necessary brief. Snippets of discussion concerning groceries or the kids did Emily and I talk. There was no longer any warmth between us, only a courteous emptiness. Emily would go into bed at night and turn her back on me. It felt like a gap between us. I used to spend hours staring at the ceiling, wondering how we got here. I wonder if we'll ever be able to fix it. My phone buzzed one Saturday morning while I was working on Lily's bike in the garage. I checked it after wiping my hands on my jeans. Ryan had texted me about it. Hey dude, tonight, are you up for a drink? My jaw tensed as I gazed at the television. A little later, Emily entered the garage. What's the matter? I raised the phone. Ryan would like to get together. Her face hardly moved. All right, I said it again. Really? She folded her arms. You don't need to make everything a problem, Jake. I firmly placed the phone on the worktop. I was abandoned because of him, the cause of my years-long treatment as an outsider. Emily let out a sigh. You're overreacting once more. I walked over to her. Stop stating that. You are well aware that I am not. Her eyes blinked. What the heck, Jake? Do you want my brother to be cut off? Do you wish for me to reject my parents? I responded icily. No, I want you to defend me. She gave her temples a rub. I have defended you. When? I made a demand, because I definitely didn't notice it when you were traveling with them to Italy. Her expression clouded. You won't overlook that, will you? No, I yelled, because it was more than a simple journey. It served as a reminder of my position or lack thereof in this household. Emily's lips formed a thin line. This is getting old to me. What? I fired back. Of me? Of the never-ending fighting, she remarked acerbically. I gave a headshake. You mean you're sick of having to deal with the fallout from your decisions? She squinted. Jake, exercise caution. I sneered. Or what? Her mouth opened, but Lily's voice drifted in from the doorway before she could say anything. Mom? Emily's stance instantly relaxed. Yes, dear? Lily took a quick look at the garage. Can you solve my puzzle for me? Emily responded. Of course, in a tone that was instantly warm and light. She gave me a stern look that seemed to indicate that we were done talking. She passed me on her way to Lily. The weight of it all settled on my chest as I stood there with my fists clenched at my sides. I had trouble sleeping that night. I was drinking a tumbler of whiskey while seated at the kitchen table. Aside from the occasional squeak of the floors, the house was silent. It buzzed on my phone. Ryan had left a message. Hey, are you coming out? After a long while of staring at the screen, I typed back. No. Another message showed up a few seconds later. Come on, man, don't act that way. My chest constricted. Like what? You understand what I mean. Don't blame us for this. It was only a journey. I balled my hands into fists. It was more than just a journey. Ryan's response was practically immediate. Dude, you need to relax. Anger clouded my vision. I got to my feet and strode upstairs. Emily was browsing through her phone while perched on the edge of the bed. Were you aware that Ryan texted me? I inquired. She let out a sigh. Jake, no, respond to me, I insisted. Carefully, she put the phone down. Indeed. He said he might get in touch. And you didn't consider alerting me? She clenched her jaw. What should I have said? Hey, Jake. My brother is going to lie to you about being left behind in a foreign country. How about that? Her eyes blinked. That is unfair. Just? I chuckled sourly. Was it justifiable for you to abandon me? When did you allow your parents to act as though I didn't exist? I prevented them from, I interrupted. You didn't stop them. That's the same fucking thing. Emily's cheeks flushed. This is tiring, Jake. I moved in her direction. You know what wears you out? Repeatedly seeing you defend them while I'm left to gather up the bits. Her lip quivered. I'm making an effort. You're not, I replied. You're attempting to maintain harmony. They are not interchangeable. With trembling hands, she rose to her feet. What are you expecting me to do? My voice broke as I continued. I want you to choose me. Her eyes began to well up with tears as she blinked. I remarked, You've always claimed that I was your partner. However, the reality is that I'm not. The outsider is me, the afterthought. That is untrue, she muttered. Show it, I responded. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She shed a tear or two. Jake, I waited. She remained silent, though. My heart broke. I walked over to the door. Where are you heading? She inquired. With a raspy voice, I said, I need air. I went down the stairs, out into the chilly night, and out of the room. I sat down on the front steps, my breath hazy in the air. I had shaking hands. My chest hurt. Emily, the person I had created my life with, sprang to mind. The woman I had deeply loved. And I came to the realization that I had doubts about my ability to trust her. I wasn't pursued by Emily that evening. I sat on those steps till the cold made my hands go numb, until dawn began to turn the sky gray, and something settled in my chest when I eventually got up and went back inside. A silent, agonizing comprehension. We had broken something. Furthermore, I doubted that it could be fixed. Downstairs, I heard Lily giggling when I woke up. Cartoons were playing softly in the background. Thin lines of sunlight sliced across the room as it streamed through the slats. I wasn't with Emily. It was cold on her side of the bed. My head was throbbing from the previous night when I sat up. I felt as though I had aged 10 years in a single day. I discovered Emily and Lily watching TV together on the couch downstairs, with Emily's arm loosely wrapped around Lily. When Lily laughed, Emily's countenance brightened. I just watched them for a moment. Emily noticed me standing there when she looked up. Her grin dimmed. Good morning. Good morning, I said. I spoke in a gruff tone. Lily whirled and gestured. Hello, Daddy. I made an effort to grin. Hello, my love. Emily got up and ran her hand through Lily's hair. I'll go get a cup of coffee. I went into the kitchen after her. She leaned on the counter after pouring herself a cup. I crossed my arms and stood opposite her. I said, We need to talk. Her gaze grew gloomy. Jake, I said. No more excuses. We can't ignore this any longer. She made a small line with her lips. What am I supposed to say? Very true, I answered. How you truly feel. She gave her temples a rub. I love you, Jake, however, I interrupted. She paused. But I also love my family. Painfully, my chest clenched. I'll always be second then. She started crying. That is unfair, I stated. That's the truth. I've spent years in second place. She gave a head shake. It's not that easy. It is, I said. I supported you. We created a life together. I assumed you would support me, so I took it when your parents treated me like an outsider. Yes, I did have your back, she muttered. You didn't, I said. You allowed it to happen while you stood there. Her lip quivered. I said, you left me behind, in Italy, by themselves. Her gaze expanded. I didn't. You did, I interrupted. You had the opportunity to stop them, however, you didn't. For days, I sat in that hotel room wondering why you didn't want to stand up for me. Her cheeks were wet with tears. I was unsure of what to do. I said, you had the option to pick me, but you didn't. She shook her hand around the coffee cup. You want me to cut off my family, Jake? No, I replied. Please stop allowing them to treat me like I'm a disposable object. She remained silent. Her quiet was sufficient. My chest gave way. With trepidation, I inhaled. I must be aware of my current position. Emily's eyes fell to the ground. I waited. A few seconds went by. Minutes after that, her eyes were red and puffy, and her face was pallid when she eventually looked up. She muttered, I'm not sure if I can provide you with what you need. My heart fell. It was there. The reality. Slowly, I nodded. All right. She flinched. Jake, no, I replied. It's all right. I took a step back from her. She made a move for my hand. Please, I retreated. You made a decision. She shed a tear or two. I walked over to the door. There stood Lily. Her eyes were big as she held her plush rabbit to her chest. It broke my heart. Daddy? She muttered. I made an effort to grin. Don't worry, my love. Her lip quivered. Are you heading out? My throat constricted. No. I only require some time. She came running over to me and put her arms around my leg. I leaned over and gave her a tight hug, burying my face in her hair. I mumble, I love you. She withdrew. Are you promising to return? I gave her a forehead kiss. I swear I prepared a bag. Only a little one, sufficient for a few days. With her hands clenched together, Emily perched on the edge of the bed. As I zipped the bag securely, she remained silent. She gazed up at me with teary eyes as I stood up. Where are you going, Jake? I said. I need space. She stood with a look of panic on her face. How long? I'm not sure. Her lip quivered. Don't go like this, please. I inhaled deeply. Emily, perhaps it would be better if I stopped waiting for you to pick me if you are unable to do so. She took a trembling breath. I love you, Jake, but not enough, I muttered. She winced. I made my way to the door. For a while, my hand lingered on the knob. I then opened it. Jake, I took one final look back. Tears were streaming down her face. I apologize, I murmured quietly. After that, I left. For the next couple of days, I remained at a motel. Once, Emily texted me to check on me. I simply answered, yeah. That was it. The roughest times were at night. Wondering if I had made the correct decision, I lay awake in a cold bed. But I knew the truth in my heart. Hers had already been made. Emily called a week later. We must speak, she stated. At a park, we met. Emily and I sat on a seat with plenty of room between us, while the children played on the swings. In her lap, her hands were intertwined. She said, I've been thinking. I waited. You're right, she muttered. I allowed them to push you away. I didn't advocate for you. My chest constricted. She raised her head, her eyes brimming with tears. But I have no idea how to fix it. I let out a sigh. Neither do I. There was silence between us. Emily wiped her eyes at last. I'd rather not lose you, I said. I also don't want to lose you. However, I can't continue to be second. I must understand that I come first. She took a deep breath. I said, I'm not requesting that you cut them off. But this won't work if they can't respect me. If you can't prioritize me and the kids. Her cheeks began to well up with tears. I told him, I love you. However, love is insufficient. She flinched. And I came to the realization that that was the end. Both of us were aware of it. With trembling hands, she rose to her feet. I apologize, Jake. So did I. My chest hurt. I understand, I muttered. For a long time we stood there. After wiping her face, Emily moved in the direction of the swings. She bent over and gave Lily a forehead kiss. Lily laughed. Heartbroken and empty, I observed them from a distance. And I was aware of, we were done. A month later, I filed for separation. Emily didn't object. We decided to divide custody. Children are resilient like that, so they adjusted more quickly than I anticipated. Ryan never expressed regret. Emily's parents did not speak. And me? I made it through. After a while, I stopped looking for her texts on my phone. I gave up expecting her to arrive at my door. For love is more than words. It's about making decisions. And finally, hers was made.